The Shep Naz Podcast begins now.
Welcome to the Shep Naz Podcast. I'm Joe, and I'm your host today. And as you're probably already anticipating, it is
Worship Wednesday.
Yes.
It's a beautiful sound.
Feels good. It's almost Wednesday every day, it seems.
It's crazy, isn't it? Weird how that works.
I don't know.
Feels like it.
But it's glad to have you in, Pastors Zach and Noah, for another edition of Worship Wednesday.
Yeah.
And today, I believe we're talking about kind of, we've talked about the mechanics, and we've done some actual, you guys shared some worship songs, which we've had rave reviews over. Shout out to Karen Moss. She's trying to single-handedly take up our play count.
There we go.
I love it. Bring it on, Karen.
She said, I've already listened to it once today. I'm going to listen to it again. But a great response for that.
Awesome.
So great job, guys. And then the past week, we had Jim in to talk about his story and how he was roped in by Jeff Linker. And so today, where are we headed with things?
Yeah, so today we were thinking about, we talked a lot about like kind of the week-to-week stuff, some of the behind-the-scenes stuff. But we also want to talk about some of the bigger things that we do too. Like, for example, we've done multiple different trainings throughout the year. And those things can be important because it's easy, when we do this week to week to week, to kind of just get into a flow of things, and you kind of just get in your own little, I hate using the word, but like you kind of get in your own little bubble and you figure out what works for you, and it's easy to just kind of get into the routine and do the routine. And so we often, not often enough, but we want to try to give experiences or opportunities for people to grow further past just what happens on a Tuesday night rehearsal or a Sunday morning worship experience. And so a couple of times, and we got a couple coming up, we like to do these extra trainings. So for example, we just not too terribly long ago did a guitar training, and not just the playing aspect of it, but like what that looks like in a worship context. And one cool thing that I love about these trainings that we're doing is that though they're focused for our team, and like we want for the guitar players on our team to come to this guitar clinic, but there's also a ton of people in our church that either play guitar and just haven't jumped on board yet, or they're learning guitar, or they even are just interested in learning guitar.
Sure.
And so we open it up to anybody. So when we had, 3, 4, 5 guitar players that are on a regular rotation on our team, we ended up having, I think, almost 20 people there maybe.
Nice.
Yeah, it was great.
Enough for a whole guitar choir.
Exactly, man. It was awesome. And one of the things, like when I do trainings, especially in those settings where, it's open to anybody, we want to make it something fun and comfortable for everybody too. It's not just like, we're here to get better, which we are.
Right.
But we want to make it fun too. And so I just sent out a thing ahead of time to whoever wanted to come, like bring a guitar. If you don't have one, let us know. We'll provide you with one. Bring your favorite worship song, and then one of your favorite songs on guitar ever. And we just went around the circle, and it was stuff from like
Smoke on the Water.
Yes.
Every single person.
Exactly. A few Stairway to Heaven's in there, and I think somebody played Hotel California. Actually, Cheeto played Hotel California. Shout out Cheeto. He nailed it. It was awesome.
All right.
But it was just a fun, cool experience. And then we got to sit around and just play together, but then talk about like, okay, kind of what Jim was saying last week, like what does it look like to worship as a guitar player too?
Sure.
So that's a really cool experience, and we actually gained 2 or 3 new members of our team out of that because there are people out there that are like, well, I don't know if I'm ready yet, but maybe I'll just show up to this thing that's coming up. And so we gained a few guitar players out of that are now on a regular rotation on our team. So really cool opportunities there. We've also done some vocal trainings in the past, where we'll just gather our team and we'll talk about, again, what it looks like to be a worship leader, because though we are paid worship people, like everybody on that platform is a worship leader, especially those who get a microphone, right? And so what it looks like to, things that not even just singing, but like singing harmony parts, leading a song, what it looks like to ad lib. Like if you know Joshua on our team, like Joshua's ad lib pro, he will just go and sing whatever God puts on his heart. And that's a skill, that's a gift that God has given him. And the beautiful thing is, and something we talk about in our trainings, and I think we've mentioned multiple times in this podcast, is everybody's different in their worship, right? Yeah. There's not a formula for worship leading. And so we have people like Joshua who are very expressive, and you have other people on our team who are just as in tune with the Spirit, but they're just not as outwardly expressive as others. And that doesn't diminish their worship, but it's just a thing that they have. So having those conversations, and I think that opens the door, and hopefully even for anybody that's listening to this that might be curious, it's like there's not like a formula to be on this team. You need to know how to sing. You need to be able to dedicate the time to do it. But most importantly, you're just there to worship Jesus.
Yeah. I can't help but when you're talking about this, and you may or may not be familiar with this, but Tim Hawkins did a thing a long time ago, like the different forms of praise, and like goalpost Jesus, and
dueling light bulbs.
And so like, that's not what the training is like. Everybody, goalpost Jesus, light bulb change.
Right. Everybody kneel on the bridge in 2, 4, go.
It is not like that.
It is not like that at all.
Very clear.
Yep. And I think that's something important to share too, is like, because so many people, like they watch the big churches on YouTube, you know, you're looking at your Elevations and your Hillsongs and your Passions or whatever churches they are. And most of those people are extremely expressive. You know, look at a Maverick City video and everybody's jumping and going crazy. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, yeah, express your worship. But if you're not a jumpy, crazy, dancey person, that doesn't change your heart posture, right?
Right.
As long as your heart posture is there for worship.
Well, more than anything, it has to be authentic.
Yep.
And if that's you authentically, then that makes sense. And everybody will sense that makes sense because that person's being authentic.
Yeah.
And if it's a show, that's also going to be demonstrated as well.
Exactly.
And so we don't want a show. We just want authentic worship, however that might look.
Yeah.
And I think it's important, too, that the more that we can perfect our craft as musicians and as vocalists, the more room we have to freely worship.
Yeah.
Like I can't pick up harmony as easy as most people. Like for me, that's been a struggle to, which we've talked about. Like everything else musically can come very easy, but like something about harmony, like I just not good at.
Yeah.
And so for me to work on that and to perfect that opens my worship up more, that I'm not in my head about what I need to sing. I'm worried about Jesus. And so the more that, we perfect what we can do and get better skillfully, I feel like that frees us up a lot more too.
Yep, exactly. And that's the point of these trainings, right? We're not here just to hammer in, worship ideals into people's heads. We are trying to get better,
And so we've had some trainings here. We've had some vocal training. Sometimes it's something as simple as, here's how you hold a microphone. And because it's different. I mean, that becomes an extension of the singer. That becomes part of an instrument and how you handle it, and different kinds of microphones and the way they work. Or if you're playing guitar, the difference between... I know for some people there's an adjustment when I'm home playing through an amp as opposed to when I'm plugging into a sound system and getting used to the difference of how that feels, and maybe not having all the control myself, handing over the control to somebody else that's mixing the sound and that kind of thing. So there are some of those mechanics that, as Noah was saying, you need to be able to get through those so that you're not focused on that stuff at the wrong time. So I guess this is the segue in the sense that we're saying essentially that when we are actually in worship, it is an overflow of some of the things that we've already been taking in as inputs and the trainings we received and so forth. So we have gone to a conference up at the Woods called Overflow, and that normally happens, I think, around February.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, February.
So did you want to talk a little bit about some of conference experiences and trainings that you received outside of Shepherd?
Absolutely. Do you want me to start with Overflow, or do you want to talk about yours?
You can start.
I'll start. Okay. So So yeah, as Joe was saying, for the past few years, we've been attending a conference at the Woods Church called Overflow. It is a worship conference. And the cool thing that I loved specifically about the Woods is it's not about Overflow at the Woods, is it's not just a conference for just worship leaders. Like
Right.
it is geared towards worship leaders in a way, but also includes musicians and tech people, cameramen and camera shot angles, which I'll talk about that here in a second. But one of the benefits and beauties of it being in a worship team or whatever is you are pouring out week to week, right? And so you're getting filled up throughout the week in preparation for Sunday, because what we're trying to do is respond out of an overflow of what we've been preparing for leading up to Sunday. And so something like a conference or an overflow is a really cool opportunity for our team to step back and get fed and to be in the congregation. And we don't have to worry about the click tracks. We don't have to worry about getting the words right. We're not worried about hitting the right chords or hitting the drums on the right beat. We're here to just worship, and that is our only job here and now. So it fills you up so that when you come back, there is an overflow. But they have these really neat breakout sessions that I loved. And I went to one this past year led by a guy named Carter. And it was all about imagery that happens on the screen, either via pictures or backgrounds or camera angles and camera shots, and how to tastefully use those things in a way that adds to the experience of worship and not distracts from it. And hearing his heart was one of the coolest things, because though I have a small hand in some of the tech things, that's y'all's world. So it kind of didn't make total sense for me to go, but the more I was reading through, I was like, this sounds cool. This sounds like something I could get benefit from, right? Because I do a little bit of video stuff every now and again. But hearing his heart was probably the coolest thing. Yeah. Because it was all about, like we've talked many times, it's like we as our department, as our team, our number one job is to not distract, but to add to the experience. And talking about ways of he was specifically talking about some of the cameramen and here's a cool shot. You can get this shot, but not be a distraction. And talking about even the producers that choose the camera shots that are being done and the timing of that. Yep. And so you're talking the technical stuff, pardon my wording here, but the nerdy stuff, if you will, right? The behind the scenes, but all of it came out of a heart of we're here to just help people worship. Yeah. So that was awesome for me. Cool. I loved it. And I know you had a really cool overflow experience, Joe. Yeah. So a couple of years ago, I went to one of those breakout sessions, and it was a gentleman named Jason Dyba, and he was, it was a workshop that I was hoping I would like, but I wasn't sure if I was going to like, because, it was about video production and so forth, which that part attracted me. But the title of it was storytelling. And I was like, okay, that sounds kind of dry, but we'll just give it a go. Yeah. And so I went. I was not disappointed. He was telling a little bit about how, and again, as you were just sharing, tying everything back to ministry. And it was Jesus was a storyteller. That's he taught through parables. This is how he did it. This is the medium, to storytell, and how you can reach people because it's sight and sound and you're engaging those senses. Yeah. And emotion and everything. And so he did a great job of kind of giving some direction of how you might go about doing those things. And then I saw on the schedule, you have breakout sessions and you also have keynote speakers. And I saw that even though he was speaking in this breakout, that the next night he was going to be the keynote speaker. And I can't remember a time when I was more looking forward to I want to see what this guy is going to do when he gets the opportunity to be the keynote speaker. And so I can remember being at the hotel that afternoon and during a break and telling Susan, I'm really looking forward to what this guy's going to do. And he did not disappoint. It was so engaging. He was telling,
it wasn't like he was trying to put on a clinic, because he really was just telling his testimony. But everything that he had taught, in the workshop, you were seeing on full display of how this guy was able to story tell, and how he was able to engage the person that he was sharing with in multiple ways, in such a way like you wanted to hear what he had to say. And so that really did affect me. Like, I start following him on social, see what he does, and learn more. But you can continue then to go back to some of those resources when you have an experience like this and say, I want to keep those principles in mind when I apply it to the things that I'm doing.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
You're up, Noah.
Yeah. So the main conference that I've been to is called the Experience Conference. It's in Disney. And I think it's a lot bigger than Overflow. But they bring in, Brandon Lake, Vertical, Red Rocks, so some bigger bands. The biggest breakout session that I went to that was the most impactful was this idea of multi-generational worship. And because most of us are in churches that are multi-generational, you have an older crowd and a younger crowd all in the same room. And how do you not cater to just one, but how do you compromise both? And how do you have an impactful worship time together and implement? And that's when learning that idea, what is a hymn, what is not a hymn, what's contemporary, and which I won't get into today, but
Save that for another episode.
It was just very insightful.
That's going to be the episode where Zach and I are gone.
Yep.
And we just turn the microphone on.
You got this one, Noah. Thanks.
See you. Let us know when you're done. Sorry, go ahead.
But it was really cool to hear from just a worship leader at a church who's doing it, and just to see, and just from his perspective, what worked, what hadn't worked, what made people angry, what didn't make people angry. So, it was really cool to be a part of, and I took some harmony classes and some stuff like that. So it was a really cool experience.
That's awesome. And I think one of what I'm gathering from everybody's conversation here, and something I think we'll segue into here in a minute, is I think it's important, again, because it's easy to get in our little bubble, to hear what other people are doing, right? People that know what they're doing, because I know I'm like really good at what I do, but I don't have it all figured out, right?
Exactly.
Hopefully you sense the sarcasm in that. Please know I am far from the best. But it is cool to have outside perspective, right? Yeah. So one of the trainings that we did last year, sometime I can't remember about when, but we brought in a guy from Kentucky named Eli, and he came and spoke to our team just about worship from his perspective. And though their church is similar in ways to ours, it's different enough that he was able to come and speak to us, and we were able just to hear a different perspective. Because, if I get up there and say something, you guys know what I've said before. You've heard me say things before. Most of you know, hopefully you know my heart by now, know, and but to hear somebody else come in and share their heart for worship and know that, we're all on the same team here. We might not be worshiping the same space, but just to have an outside ear who is searching for the same goal that we are, and that's to just seek after the heart of God. Yeah,
it's important for us not to become like that, where we know it's best, we're better than every other church around, but it's like when we get in that mindset, we're limiting ourselves and limiting what God can do if we're only focused on what's going on in our brains and not because somebody could be doing it a lot better than us. And if we're not acceptable to that, then it can be a problem for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, speaking of trainings, we do have one coming up.
Yeah.
So you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, actually, I'm really excited about this one. So mark your calendars, vocalists in our church. Let me make sure I get this right. I had it pulled up earlier, but I don't want to get these dates wrong. Okay, the dates are August 18th. That is a Sunday, and August 25th. So 2 Sundays. They're only an hour long, going to start at 1 o'clock. And a friend of mine from a church that I was at back in the day named Sierra has this training company called Arise with Sierra, and she does vocal training. She's phenomenal. I mean, the girl is top notch. And I had thought about bringing her in the past, But if you know churches and church budgets, money doesn't just fall from trees, and it's not always just free to grab when you want it. And so I wasn't sure if we were going to be able to pull it off, to bring her in, to pay her to come in. Well, had been praying about, okay, what's the next training we want to do? And hadn't heard from her in a long time. And out of the blue, got an email from her. And due to some generous donations, she reached out and offered to do our training here with no cost to us.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it's amazing. So we're going to be getting a top-notch professional training, and we're going to be talking about all kinds of stuff. Noah and I had a sit-down meeting with her, and here's the perfect reason why we bring people in, right? It's like Noah's saying, we all have our things that we're good at, and there's things that we aren't good at. Like vocal stuff is not my wheelhouse. Like I can pick out a part, but I'm not great at training it. I'll just be honest. It's a struggle I have. It's something that I'm working on and hoping to get better at. So to bring in somebody who, like Sierra, who knows what she's talking about. I mean, she was like, "What do you guys want to work on?" I'm like, "Oh, how about this and this?"
About how to sing.
Yeah,
How about that?
Exactly.
How about that?
That's kind of how I felt after the conversation, because I was like,
It was.
I want to work on harmonies and how to take care of my voice better.
And
she's
she
like,
went, okay, let's do this.
Yeah.
We'll start at the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. And she took me to school, which is good, which is exactly what we need. I need it, and that's the thing. Like we're saying, we need people around us to help us get better as leaders too,
Well, and I think it's important to note that there's never a point at which you're past the point of I've learned everything and I don't need to be trained. A lot of people are like, oh, I know how to sing. And it's like, well, yeah, that may be true. But I also want you to keep in mind, the people that you're hearing on the radio and the people that are touring, they have vocal coaches, by the way. I hate to dispel, and the delusion that you might have.
Right.
A good family friend of ours, Diane Sheets, Susan and I went to high school with. She is a professional vocal trainer, and she lives down in Nashville. And she tours with Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban, and she's been with Zach Williams and so forth. And these people have a vocal coach with them, and to say, hey, you need to be doing this, otherwise you're going to mess your voice up. Exactly. Or you need to be, on different ways that you can take care of your instrument. So that's a great resource, and normally a very expensive resource, but free. And is anyone welcome?
Anybody who wants to sing. So we are highly encouraging everybody that's currently singing on our team. But if you are interested, I know I've already talked to a couple people who said I might benefit from that because I want to try out, but I'm not sure.
Like Pastor Rob.
Yeah, Rob was first to sign up on the list, man. I was saving him a front row seat.
Nice.
But yeah, so yeah, if you want to come, if you're interested, mark your calendars for August 18th and August 25th.
Cool. All right. Well, that will wrap it up for today. As with everything, you are able to minister from your overflow, as we've been talking about, training that you're receiving. So that also applies to your spiritual life. If you're wanting to be able to share with your friends and family, you need to get filled up. So get into the Word every day. Also, check out things that are going on at church by going to shepnaz.org. We encourage you to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. For Pastor Zach and Pastor Noah, and a special appearance by Pastor Rob, I'm Joe. Have a great day. This podcast is a production of the Shepherd Church of the Nazarene, Gahanna, Ohio. Email to podcast@shepnaz.org and let us know what you think.